Most of us watching this accept faith, with conditions, on our terms. Like a negotiation, kind of like, if you do this for me, God, then I'll do this for you. If you do this for me, then I'll listen to you. If you save me, God, but let me keep this and that about myself, I'll call your name, proclaim it to others, and even give to your cause. Most of us accept faith, but we do it with conditions because we're human. But that is not how faith is supposed to work. Jesus tells us a story today about being good soil. Now, this is decidedly the most non-Lutheran parable in the Bible. Most of Jesus' parables center on God's unconditional love. The Good Samaritan, the laborers in the vineyard, the prodigal son, they're all very Lutheran. This one, not so much. This one talks about how we are good, not so good, and sometimes just plain bad soil. It talks about how the seed of the gospel can flourish and not flourish, as in die, in us. Jesus said, "A sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell on the path and was trampled on, and the birds of the air ate it up. Some fell on the rock, and as it grew up, it withered for lack of moisture. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew with it and choked it. Some fell into good soil, and when it grew, it produced 100-fold. As he said this, he called out, 'Let anyone with ears to hear listen.'" Okay, so why would I say non-Lutheran? Well, there's a bent in Lutheran theology and preaching, and it's not at all bad. That bent says that our salvation is in God's hands, which it is. It says that there's literally nothing we can do to be saved. And again, it's true. It's all in God's hands, and thank God for that. Catch the last line of that parable. You got ears? You got ears? Then you better listen, lest you be less than fruitful. There's a very solid sense in the parable that our ears, our actions, our attitude matter. The birds might get that gospel seed sowed in you. Birds like endless time spent on your phone or computer, becoming overly concerned with your appearance, trying to keep up with that kid in your class, or the neighbors. Or the rocks might get you. Becoming overly immersed in your responsibilities, the job, the mortgage, the good grade, the promotion, that position on the team, that part in the play. Or the thorns, endless fascination with gossip, endless opportunity to criticize the actions or decisions of others, endless chances to divert blame and not look at yourself. This is kind of a depressing parable, isn't it? It mostly deals with how we kill the gospel. We just tend to spend so much of our lives not being good soil. And of course, what do most do with this story? Well, we make it about heaven. But it's not about heaven, and that's where this parable gets a little more Lutheran again, because it's not about the afterlife. As I've told you, and I will tell you till my dying day, Jesus was mostly about this life. He spoke of the next life, of course, but I highly doubt that he or the people he spoke to were terribly concerned about that. They were not worried about hell. They trusted God that there would be a resurrection. They were worried about now. Our modern concept of hell was not part of the afterlife vision of first century Jewish people. So given that, we need to understand what this story is about in terms of our lives, the right now, the everyday. And what the story is about is becoming good soil. My first garden had lovely soil. Rich, earthy, dark, productive. But a few feet over, it got red. There was clay. It was not productive. But with manure, compost, even some sand, it got better. And with some work season after season, it got better still. I made it good soil. And we can do the same with our lives. We've all seen the birds descend. We all have our rocks. We all have thorns. The point is not that we somehow magically should not have obstacles to the gospel in our lives that life is simply going to throw at us. I think the point is instead that we should swat the birds back, toss the rocks, and dig the thorns out by the roots, and then cling to the words of Jesus. We should cling to the words of Jesus like good soil clings to the roots of a plant so that we can grow. Because growing is the point of this parable. Not eternal life, avoiding hell, but rather becoming a Jesus person. But yeah, if you're going to grow, if you're going to become a Jesus person, then we all have things we have to let go of. On that journey, we all have something or many things holding us back. Our job is to figure out where those birds are coming from. What are the rocks in my life? What desires creep like thorns into the path Jesus wants me to take? We need to figure it out because we're the only ones that can see them and completely discard them. At the same time, we are called to help each other in this process. Maybe this needs to happen for you through therapy. We have a saying on staff, everybody should be in therapy. And I think it's true, at least at some points in every life. We all probably would benefit from an occasional check-in with a therapist. Or maybe it needs to happen with a friend willing to talk, to share this spiritual journey with you, or a group of friends willing to do the same. But the point is these birds, rocks, thorns, they're hard to dispose of on our own. Nevertheless, our recognizing them is absolutely essential to becoming good soil, and that is our call. Not to get to heaven, God has assured that. Not to be in first place, but to grow as people and make the world better, because that is what good soil does. Good soil, with God's help, chooses to become good soil by dropping the conditions of faith, the bargains we make with God, so that we really can become good. I was blessed, truly blessed, a week ago, to embark on a fishing trip with my son, my father-in-law, and another friend. A ridiculous blessing, born of the privilege I have and of the unbelievable resources we have in this land. On the first night I met a man, also there fishing, and I discovered he was alone. His traveling/fishing companion had taken ill the week before. We talked, we laughed, but I knew even as he put up a brave front, he was a little crushed inside. And a voice inside me said, "How can you not ask this man to join you for dinner?" There were birds, stones, thorns in the way. What if he turned out to be a jerk? What if my traveling companions objected to me changing their vacation? What if? But I did it. I chose to be and asked my companions to be good soil. Because the Christian thing to do was to be Christ to this lonely neighbor and ask him to break bread with us. And the truth is, we had a ball all week long. We will likely stay in touch. But the point isn't that. It's that we all chose to rise above selfishness, control of the vacation situation, and feared that we might have an undesirable guest on our hands for the next 5 days. We chose to instead become good soil. It was hardly heroic. Being good soil often is not. And it was absolutely a lesson for us all, a lovely lesson that bore fruit with every meal shared 100-fold. You know the birds that attack you. You know the rocks. You know the thorns. We all have them. Look them in the eye. Face them. Toss them aside. Get some help to do it. Dare to be good soil. You will never regret it.